Well, it is my sincere pleasure now to introduce to you the Honorable Thomas McLarty III, known to most of you as Mack McLarty, who served as Chief of Staff to the President and Special Envoy for the Americas during the Clinton administration. He is currently President and CEO of McLarty Associates, an international consulting firm, and Chairman of McLarty Companies. Ladies and gentlemen, please, the Dialogue's Co-Vice Chairman, the Honorable Mack McLarty. Welcome him to the stage.
Maria, thank you very much. Good evening. I am pleased and proud to be here as a long-standing board member of the Inter-American Dialogue. I thank each and every one of you for your support for the Dialogue's important and meaningful work. I have the privilege to introduce a friend of long standing, a legend, a living legend in the peace brokering department, Bernard Aronson. And the truth be told, by your applause, that Bernie needs no introduction to this audience, but I'm going to give him one anyway. Bernard Aronson epitomizes what it means to be one of Washington's wise men, a statesman whose contribution to democracy and diplomacy reflect not just a moment or even a chapter, but truly the work of a lifetime. Bernie has not once, not twice, but 3 times helped to end civil strife. First in El Salvador and then in Nicaragua, and now hopefully in Colombia, a close friend of the United States and a model for the region, and where President Santos has taken such courageous steps for peace. In refreshing contrast to our partisan times in this country, Bernie has transcended politics, serving the national interest and the common good as a loyal advisor to presidents of both parties in multiple administrations. He has earned the State Department's highest award, the Distinguished Service Medal, and more importantly, the unspoken gratitude of millions of Central and South Americans who can now rebuild their countries and rebuild their lives. So it was no surprise that President Obama, when he needed a special envoy to help Colombia to end a half-century of conflict, Bernie got the call. In his latest act, Envoy Aronson has met with 2 longtime opponents, the FARC and the Colombian government, to help the parties move closer to the peace that the Colombian people want and so much deserve. The stakes are enormous, but so are Bernie Aronson's talents. There's no one who is more astute and effective to carry forward the strong commitment of Colombia's future that began with Planned Colombia in the Clinton administration and then continued in the President Bush 43 administration, and now President Obama and his team, many of whom are here tonight, are carrying that forward in close partnership with their Colombian counterparts. As Bernie said when he accepted the job, quoting President John F. Kennedy, "When history writes its verdict, let it be said that we pursued peace with all of the courage and all of the strength and all of the resourcefulness at our command." Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to present a valued friend, a true leader for the Americas, Special Envoy to the Colombian peace process, Bernard Aronson.
I think I would give you a piece of advice in Washington. If you're ever introduced by Mack McLarty, don't inhale. You know, as Roberta Jacobson, Tom Shannon, and other officials in the State Department who've been responsible for Latin America know, when you get in a fight in this town and Latin America is at stake, there aren't as many friends as you think there ought to be who stand up and get into that fight and help you out. And Mack McLarty is a great exception to that rule. If there's a fight for better U.S. policy in Latin America, he doesn't have to be asked. He's usually at the head of the line leading the effort. And all of you who've read his op-ed pieces in the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post and elsewhere, he's one of the most respected and influential voices on these issues. So I think Mack's a national treasure, both to the Inter-American dialogue, but also to all of us who care about the region, and I'm very proud to call him a friend. So I thought the most useful thing I could do in my brief time up here is to talk a little bit about some of the lessons that I think, at least I have learned, and maybe our country has learned, dealing with these peace processes, first in Central America and now in Colombia. And I want to start with a story. I went to El Salvador in 1983 on a human rights delegation, and that was at the depths of the killing in that country. You could see trucks going by with men in plain clothes and army boots, and nobody knew where they were going, but the next day you'd find dozens, if not hundreds of bodies at the end of a cliff on the outskirts of El Salvador. And one of the people I met with was the head of the UCS, the Campesinos Union in El Salvador, and he was a peasant, and he opened up the books of his organization, and he showed me all the board members who had served, who had been murdered by the death squads, and all of his successors had been murdered by the death squads, and I think it was about 67 photos. And I asked him, what was the biggest mistake, my country made in El Salvador? And he said, you spent too much time worrying about democracy far from your shores and not enough here at home. That campesino leader did not say, Yankee, go home. He said, where were you when we needed you? And what he was talking about was the 1972 election. This may seem like old history to some of you, but perhaps not. And in that election, a reform ticket led by Napoleon Duarte, a Christian Democrat, and Guillermo Ungo, a social democrat, was winning the vote count. The military intervened, they stopped the count, they named their candidate the winner, and when a group of younger officers tried to support Duarte and stand up for a democratic election, Duarte and his followers were beaten and sent into exile in Venezuela. And I spoke to Duarte years later about the years he spent between then and the present time, when he came up to the United States repeatedly seeking help from us. And he said, one time I asked to meet with every staffer of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and one of them showed up. And he said to me, I came to your country carrying a lighted bomb in my hand, begging for you to cut the fuse, and you did not. And now the bomb's exploded, and all the pieces can't be put together again neatly or simply. In 1972, if the United States had intervened and mobilized the international community to support that democratic election, much of the horror of the Salvadoran Civil War might have been averted. And I would like to say that the United States failed to do that for some grand strategic reason, but actually I think El Salvador looked like a sleepy Central American country, and we just were not that interested. So one of the lessons I draw is that while we are always mindful that the United States has a history of intervention, which is not necessarily our finest hour, we often get in trouble in this hemisphere by failing to act when problems can be addressed in reasonable ways, and waiting till problems fester into crises, and then trying to make a difference when all our choices are narrow and the options are risky and difficult. I think El Salvador also teaches maybe a better lesson about the value of bipartisanship, which is something that Mack alluded to. In the 1980s, Central America was the most divisive issue in our politics after Vietnam. And as a result, we spoke with multiple voices in the region, and we were very ineffective. When we mobilized and organized and negotiated a bipartisan accord on Central America, which united the executive and the Congress, Republicans and Democrats, we were able to speak with one voice and play a role in ending those two conflicts. Fortunately, I think we learned some of those lessons when it came to Colombia. Colombia is a country of enormous talent and enormous promise, enormous resources. But 15 years ago, as President Santos has said publicly, Colombia was on the verge of becoming a failed country, you know, facing narco-traffickers, paramilitaries, the ELN and the FARC. And the guerrillas were beginning to see the lights of the city not so far away. And Colombia proposed a new partnership with the United States in which they would take the lead, taxing their own people, enlarging the size of their military, undergoing judicial reform, but they asked for the United States to help. And a Democratic president and a Republican Congress came together in support of Plan Colombia, which provided not just military aid or intelligence, but reform for the judiciary, human rights, social development, and the like. Not everything was perfect, but today, Colombia is enjoying the least violent year in its history since 1973. You know, more than 47,000 combatants were demobilized under Plan Colombia. And as Mac mentioned, as all of you know, the government is in a peace process which holds out some hope of ending the war. But it's important for us to recognize the strengths of Plan Colombia were its staying power and its bipartisan support. It's been sustained through 3 presidents and multiple Congresses of both parties. And if peace comes, we need to maintain that coalition in support of Colombia, because the peace will be very expensive and it'll be very difficult. There are more landmines in this country than any country in the world except Afghanistan. There are mass graves that have to be recovered and loved ones united with the remains of those who have disappeared. There's an entire program of rural social development to try to heal and close the gap between the Colombia of the interior, where the government has not had a successful presence, and the Colombia of the cities, which has been more prosperous and enjoyed security. And it's very important for Colombia to succeed. The worst thing the United States could do at this time would be to walk away and fail to provide additional resources and help as Colombia seeks to consolidate the peace that we hope is coming. And I think if peace succeeds, Colombia will be the model of democratic success in the region. It's already, according to the World Bank, the best place to do business in Latin America. It has the most stable and well-developed judicial system, even though much work needs to be done. And its people, as everyone who knows, are the most resourceful and creative and productive in this hemisphere. So I think Colombia, with U.S. support, will emerge as the great model of success and a rebuke to the failed authoritarian populist models in the region. It'll be the model of success for Democrats, small d and large. We have a stake in that outcome, and I think that we shouldn't kid ourselves about the U.S. role. We're a junior partner in this, just as we were with Plan Colombia. The credit for this peace will belong to President Santos and his colleagues and the presidents who succeeded him and preceded him. But the United States will have played a role if we sustain our commitment to this country. And this peace will be a peace that ends the longest war in Latin America's modern history. Thank you.